Hi, it's Craig on the R2 Building channel, and on this video I'm going to talk about something that I am notoriously known for in the R2 Builders Club, and that is budget building. Doing things frugally on a shoestring budget, building a fully remote controlled droid for less than $1,000, and I know that seems impossible, but I am going to show you how I did it, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the radar eye. There are some available from the group in resin castings. Some of the very expensive ones are milled out of aluminum. This one is a resin casting I got early on from the club's founder. This one I made out of brass. It is sheet brass, very thin brass, probably about as thick as like the cardboard you would find on a cereal box. And this was made flat pack style, where I had a pattern on a sheet of paper, glued it to the brass, cut it out, and I bent it, angled it, formed it, shaped it, and in the end it was really ugly because I had this whole thing bound up and held together by twisted jerry wire. And once I had it all together, I put it on a heavy-duty metal screen and attacked it with propane torches, and with solder and flux I soldered the seams. If I take a close look here, you can see how I bent this from the side over, and it was soldered along this seam and this seam. And this was in 2007, so this brass that is about 16 years old is in the need of a polish, but solid construction on that. I'm going to show you the steel one that I made years later on this one. This is held on by magnets, so it looks very nice on the front side, but the back side looks pretty rough. Tack welded with a wire feed welder all around, and as ugly as those tack welds are, on the other side it was filed smooth and skim coated with Bondo, primed and painted. And with something like this, it's best to leave a little extra material so you can kind of fine shape the curvature when it's all done. But radar eyes on the droids. The lenses, I'm going to show you on the computer. I've got some stills to show you how I did the lenses. So the lenses were made with plexiglass. Here I have a piece of smoked plexi, and I stuck them in the oven on top of these wood cedar strips. I recommend cedar because cedar does not like to catch on fire very well. It's used around like in saunas and so on. So on 2 pieces of cedar in about a 300-degree oven, I put this piece of plexiglass on these cedar strips. After a few minutes, I opened up the oven, and with gloved hands I flipped it over. After a few minutes I flipped it over again, and when it starts to get really soft, like it's made out of rubber, take it out of the oven with a gloved hand very quickly, and I put it on a travel mug and took a hard plastic ball and pushed down on it, and several seconds later it was cool enough to be no longer soft. Pluck it off, and here I've got a dark lens here and a red lens there, and trim off the excess, and boom, I've got lenses for my radar eyes. So on a budget. These plexiglass pieces were scraps that I got at a plastic supplier. They sell scrap plastic out front by the pound. Very inexpensive way to do plexiglass radar eye lenses. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is the hollow projector. I touched on that a little bit on a previous video, and I'm going to show you more in depth on how I did that. So it started out as a chain link fence post cap where I cut the top off, and I used a drum sander to kind of make these wavy lines in there. And then it's felt lined. I had a piece of red felt laying around, so I put black Sharpie on it so you didn't see this red. And then what I pretty much did was just, here's like a stainless steel doorknob. I got a passage doorknob that did not have the lock, very inexpensive doorknob sets. And then here is the scope mouthwash cap with a lens in there. And you put all that together and you have a holo projector. This one actually comes out. Let me pop this one out. So there you can see the assembly. I've got the piece of felt in there. 3 springs on the back side that kind of keep it together. And once you get it together, you've got a holo projector for very little money. I would put, less than $6 or $7 for a holo projector. So that fits right on there. And so I've taken care of 2 detail pieces for the droids very inexpensively. The next thing that I've kind of cut corners on is the bearing that that spins the head. There's 2 ways you can go. What's really popular in the club are these 17-inch Rockler Lazy Susans. You can get these at Rockler Woodworking online. But, I can debate a lot of people on why you should or should not have to use these. I have used the good old-fashioned hardware store Lazy Susan in 2 of my droids. Let's see, on the clear dome droid here, let's see, yeah, you can see it in there. That's the 12-inch Lazy Susan in there. And I even have the 12-inch Lazy Susan on this one that you might have seen in a previous video. I'm going to do the side-by-side test on this. Let's turn this one. Not too much clinking and clunking of the bearings in there. Let's turn this Lazy Susan. Very quiet. In fact, that noise you're hearing is the motor being forced in there. Now, this one has the Rockler. Let's give this one a listen. You can kind of hear the bearings clicking, clacking, and clunking in there, but it's not a apples-to-apples comparison. I have taken a grease gun needle fitting and put the grease into the bearings on these 2 cheap 12-inch Lazy Susans. The grease quiets it down. Whether you use the Lazy Susan or the Rockler, no grease. You can hear the bearings in there. With grease, you can't hear the bearings. So I'm up for debate on this one. You can go with the Lazy Susan 12-inch from the hardware store or the 17-inch from Rockler. Either way, you're going to have to grease the bearings to keep them rather quiet. So the last thing I want to touch on that is done on the cheap is putting power into the dome. If you're looking to put more functions in the dome, you might have to get an expensive slip ring with many contacts to bring power from the body into the dome, and it can spin and you're not twisting wires. My solution, because all I'm really doing is just lighting up the lights in the dome, is I've got a 1/4-inch stereo headphone jack placed in the center here. This droid, due to the way it was put together, that jack is not in the center. We're getting glare here. It's going to be pretty hard to see that, I think. Yeah, that is kind of hard to see that in there. There it is. That's not plugged in the center. That's actually offset. The center is a little bit beyond that. Actually, where that nut is way back there, that's the center. This is off center. But in the domes, I have an arc of coaxial cable. Now this arc is hard mounted over here, and it does a nice high rainbow arc, and there's the stereo headphone jack there. And on this dome with the 17-inch rockler, there it is there. I like to have a bit of excess, because what you can easily do is when you're putting the dome on, you have a lot of excess where you can plug this in, and then you can work on getting the dome on its little mounting points. So here's the thing about these stereo headphone jacks here is the shield on this section here is not spring loaded. This is just touching a metal cylinder. The midsection and the tip have spring-loaded contacts on them. So when they spin around, you get solid contact on the tip and the midsection, but the shield portion gets intermittent contact. So what I've done is that's where my Droid is getting its power, the tip and the midsection. The thing that you have to be aware of is when you plug these things in and unplug them, the tip momentarily shorts out those spring-loaded contacts as you're plugging it in and unplugging it. So, this one I should have been showing you, because you can actually see the wear marks on that because of all of the rotations, the thousands of rotations. I do put a little dab of grease on there just so to keep the friction down. But so when I make sure I put a switch in the Droid body, killing power to that jack right there. So when I plug it in and unplug it, I'm not going to short that out and create sparks. So I actually do two things. Not only do I have a switch in there to kill power to that, but I have a little tiny 1 to 2 amp fuse. So if I do forget to power down when I'm plugging and unplugging, I'll blow the fuse. No big deal. Pop in a new fuse, but it's really a no-brainer. Whenever I'm taking the dome off or putting it on, I make sure that the dome light switch is powered off so it's safe to plug and unplug. So that is a good start on budget building, and I hope you found this entertaining. This is Craig on my R2 Builders channel. Catch you later.